welcome to the new Secure Insights podcast. My name's Steve Burdet.
And I'm Alex Walthers. Welcome.
For those of you who might be familiar with the Secure Insights podcast, this is a revamped version of it. It used to be audio only, and now we're going to make it video. And in addition, if you are an audio only person, you could still get this wherever you're getting your audio podcasts.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but now with the video form, will also be found on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, definitely look for the little bell button so you can be notified when new episodes come out, and you'll get the latest information. We, fingers crossed, we'll have some great guests and some excellent content for you guys to have over the coming months.
Yeah, those excellent guests are something to look forward to. But maybe our back and forth banter as well will really draw them in. But before we dive into all that, maybe we introduce ourselves.
Yeah, well, great. Why don't you go ahead first?
Yeah, so as I said, Steve Burdet, I'm the manager of our solutions management team here in the Americas. And what that entails is making sure that we have a conduit of information connecting us to our R&D teams back in Lund, Sweden, as well as in other parts of the world. And this allows us as the Americas to make sure our market needs, challenges, and opportunities are mixed with the engineering's knowledge of technology and progression of such, as well as making sure that they understand the needs, challenges, and technology potentials, so we can blend those two things, what the customers are looking for and where technology is going. So that, as always, you've maybe heard, we don't make the mistake of faster horses when what a really technology was going to allow us to have a car. So we try to work that way. And then we also make sure to, if we do that part right, we then figure out how do we help launch products into this market as well, because it's not so easy as just bringing it to distribution. There's a lot more to it.
So it's a twofold role. So you're getting feedback from the market to bring to Sweden to adjust and change the roadmap, but then also taking the roadmap from Sweden and how do we bring it to the Americas market?
Couldn't have said it better myself. Actually, I didn't. You said it better. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I'm the team lead for our technology integration partners, working with our business development and solutions enablement team. So me and my team work with all of the third-party companies that are looking to integrate and support access devices, whether it be server storage, switches, VMS, analytics, and frankly, everything else in between. It's a nice open program, and so we get to experience all sorts of new integrations. So maybe the counterbalance here is that you're the access solutions guy, and I'm the everything that's not access solutions guy.
Yeah, I got to say the ecosystem partners and what we have for an ecosystem is kind of what makes this so great, because we can only go so far, and ultimately you have to go the rest of the way with partners, customers, and anybody else, right? Working in collaborative. Speaking of working collaborative, this might be one of the few times we actually get to collaborate on the mic, right? Because it seems like moving forward, what we're going to do is have one of us and then have more time to talk with our special guests.
Exactly. The idea is that it will be either one of us, so you won't really see both of us on the mic at the same time, which is probably for the best. But it'd be a good way for us to split up and have different sets of questions, different opinions, and different thoughts to bring out with some of our guests that we'll have on the show here.
Yeah, because I think the point of the show is really about technology, hot button topics, and not so much just two bald or partially bald guys talking for a period of time. And so we figured that maybe having this episode 0 of this relaunch show would be a good opportunity to bring us both on, introduce ourselves, give the audience a little bit peek behind the scenes, as well as then bring on a special guest to talk about some of the overall trends within the security industry and within Access itself, which would be pretty exciting.
Yeah. And so before we bring any guests in, maybe there's a little bit more here we need to talk about who we are, what we do, how we got started. So maybe it's a place to start. I mean, you mentioned a high level what your role is and what the team does, but what does that actually look like day to day? What does a day in the life of Steve Burdet at Access actually look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a blend between spending a lot of time with our sales teams, our channel partners, or our customers, just trying to understand their needs, their challenges, and opportunity. This is manifested, if you will, through Teams meetings, on-site meetings, trade shows like IC West or GSX or many of the other ones that might occur. and just kind of getting a pulse of what's going on. And then in the inverse, spending a lot of time with our product managers and our development teams over in Sweden to ensure that that information is flowing to them. We're talking through it at stages where they can make changes, and also helping them in preparation for the launch, understanding what the knowledge gaps might be or the needed materials to ensure that if we do the job right of developing a good product, the market is ready to run with it and adopt it in the way that we know it's going to work best to provide value. So that's where we spend a lot of our time. But how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, spending a lot of time with partners to understand the gap in the Access portfolio, the things that we're not providing, and what are the things that maybe you're actually collecting from the team of this is something we really need, this is a space we have in the portfolio that Access isn't providing a solution, and how do we find a partner that can do that thing? And then once we find that partner, how do we make the technology come together? So working closely with APIs and SDKs to build those integrations. And then once we have that integration, how do we put the marketing wrapping around it and then take that out to the sales team so that we can drive this joint value together and be successful together with that partner. So it's similar things to a lot of the stuff you're doing, just not working with some of the Access teams in-house, but working with partner marketing teams and partner development teams to bring these technologies and connect these things together.
It sounds like your dream job, but maybe before you started dreaming about it, what drew you into this world of technology and security? How'd you find yourself here?
Yeah, honestly, it was a little bit of luck. I graduated in college, not to date myself, in the late 2000s, 2009, and there was a recession. It was kind of a crazy market to find a job. I found a job for an integrator through Craigslist, which was I would not recommend going on Craigslist and looking for a job these days. But it lucked out. And so I was working for an integrator. We were doing installs. We were a big Access partner. I had a marketing background, so I was on the marketing team. And the role just happened to be talking about how this integrator could market and sell all of these other different technologies like Access cameras, VMS systems, wireless systems. And so I was kind of the product marketing guy who was pulling all of those things together. And then shortly thereafter, there were some changes at the organization. There was open positions at the Access team. And so I knew some salespeople here over at Access who were able to get me in the door with some interviews and talk to some people. And so I joined the Access marketing team in, I think, 2011 and have been here since. But so even from my first job out of college, it was working with partners. It was working with these technology companies. And then my entire career now at Access for almost 15 years has been working with these partners. So it was, a little bit of luck of the draw that got me here. But the experiences I've had at Access, the people, the culture, the company, the things that we're doing, the innovation we're driving, feels incredible, right? To be able to have a hand on the wheel to steer an organization like this and to drive some of the things that we want to do has really made this place a home. I mean, it's really been a fantastic journey here. But what about you? How did you end up in this world?
Yeah, accidentally, I guess. Prior to this, I had advanced experience as a butcher, so would love to talk high-end meats and cuts if anybody out there wants to have a little chat. But recognize that wasn't really a career that I wanted to stay in forever, as fun as it was, and it was a lot of fun. So my background was actually in education, and so I got a job here as a technical trainer, which was really awesome to apply my education experience and background in a way that was maybe more in a corporate world with different opportunities than just in the teaching world. And being here as a technical trainer was a unique position, at least for me, because it kind of stands in the middle of a triangle, which is a triangle of technology, of marketing, and sales, because you're out there having to teach people. You're out there certainly having to learn how to sell the products in a way, or at least sell the values. And also, in all cases, in the world, you're kind of a marketer, either of yourself, your brand, your company, what have you. So being able to be in that in my early days gave me a great opportunity to learn a lot. I don't think I could spell IP before I got a job at Access. And that was a quick study past that to learn everything about network video, access control, audio, and beyond. So it gave me a good foundation. And then this role opened up and found it really interesting being able to, as you said, put a hand on the steering wheel or just have a part to play rather in influencing the roadmap and the type of products that we develop after spending 3 years of meeting hundreds of people a year who had so much good feedback and so many opportunities that were present in our market that just really inspired me to want to share that with others, particularly those who can make the changes to it. And fortunately, we're at a company that really values that. I mean, we have tons of brilliant engineers and a wonderful organization, but I think what our secret sauce is that we have built a culture of listening and hunting for feedback and working with those partners and customers and whomever to realize these things, as we recognize it's not our infinite wisdom that might help us be so innovative, but it is the collaboration with others that helps us be innovative. And so my role, and now a team of many more people, exists solely because that's what we're dedicated to, is listening to the market and working with them.
So it feels like you're a technical trainer on steroids now, right? You've taken just the stuff we've had before, and now you're training everyone on here's all the newest, the latest and greatest stuff. So obviously working closely with the training team with those things. But was there any moment when you made the shift, maybe even from technical trainer to where you are now, where you thought, boy, this industry has impact. This means something more than just I'm selling widgets or talking about stuff.
You know, it's fascinating. In the early days, I remember some people saying a lot of people don't fascinate about getting into security. And for those out there who might, I'm not taking anything away from you, but a lot of people kind of fall into this as an industry, and I am no exception to that rule. What's interesting, even to this day, and I've been here about as long as you, I'm going on 14 years now, our VP, Frederick Nielsen, has all of the new people that we onboard. He gives them a homework, which is to take a picture of yourself with a camera, and the first person who sends the email with that picture of a camera out in the wild, Frederick will take them to lunch. And once you do that, whether or not you're the first person and you get that lunch or not, you start to recognize how omnipresent security is around us, whether it's the cameras all over the place or the access control badges that you use to get in and out, or just the bollards around a stadium that prevent things from driving up over it, right? It's everywhere. And that kind of just, it was like a light bulb moment, a glass break moment to see, wow, security is not just the guard behind the desk watching 1,000 monitors, but it's truly everywhere and part of our whole society. And what's been fascinating over these 14 years is to see how certainly that's evolved in some aspects, certainly technologically, but still evolving actually towards becoming even more omnipresent, where what was just surveillance in the past is now becoming eyes, and eyes can be useful not just for security, but could be for business intelligence or operational efficiency or anything. So we're actually starting to see people expand even greater into how they want to use these types of devices, which, I don't know, just realize how impactful this industry can be. But what about for yourself? What gave you that spark to be here for so long and keep doing what you do?
Yeah, I've told this story a couple times to people. So again, I kind of lucked into the industry and all of this stuff, but then started at Axis, and I was onboarding new technology partners into our program. And this company joined, and it was relatively basic what they were looking to do. And I remember the name, but I won't say too much about them. But they were looking to integrate with Axis encoders back in the day. If you recall, we have encoders to shift from analog to IP video, and
we still have encoders. We're a leader in encoders actually right now.
I had to Google that this last week to make sure we still have encoders. We do still have encoders. There's 2 in the portfolio still. But this was a company that just wanted to integrate Axis encoders so that they could share video from NICUs in hospitals for children that were born prematurely or needed to stay longer. And the idea being, like, this is a parent's worst experience when they first have a kid, is like you have to leave your child in the hospital. You can't be there with them. And they wanted to just connect encoders to be able to send video to those people so that they could go home and they could pull up their phone and they could still log in and see their kid. And now I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and now realizing the impact of that thing. I mean, that was a super easy integration, a very basic concept. But we got that company up into the program. This was a thing that Axis maybe wouldn't really focus on as a market, but having them join the program, filling a gap in the portfolio, and then like offering that value to parents was like, oh, this matters. And that's setting aside all the other safety and security and surveillance focused things that we do. But I just remember that one like really landed the plane for me as like, oh, there's more to this. And like, again, that was just such a little thing, but has still like resonated with me. And again, I've tell that story to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean, real life impact, which is wild, right? Saving lives, changing lives. Surveillance is so much more, again, than just the person behind the monitor watching all of those things. It really touches people's lives. And I think we could talk about countless examples where that is. But it actually kind of opens up the idea of the different types of challenges or needs people are trying to solve. So what kind of challenges do you see you and your teams trying to solve every day when it comes to partners and ecosystems and et cetera?
I mean, that's changed over the years, right? Video surveillance in the market that Axis focused on, 15 years ago when I started is way different than some of the things we're doing now. We've seen the shift. It used to be video surveillance was forensic. Something happened and you had to go back and look and see what it was, and you would pull that video and you would send it to the police and like hope the police could go do something about it. But the biggest shifts, the last couple of years was the shift from reactive to proactive. Talking about changing behaviors and outcomes, you want to be able to use video surveillance and analytics and all of these other technologies that come together to change the behavior of someone before they do the bad thing, right? You want to stop the bad actor and get them to course correct before it becomes an issue by tying in analytics and tying in audio and having alerts and things like this. But now we're taking that even a step further of how does proactive video surveillance and vision data help create efficiencies in different use cases in different environments. I spoke about this a lot recently. If you think of like all of the cameras in a retail store that are obviously designed initially for security functions and making sure that people aren't stealing and stuff like that, which again, of course, is great. But now all of those cameras can track the flow of employees or customers and can tell you how valuable is this end cap. Should we put our best-selling products or whatever it happens to be on this end cap because we're going to get more interactions and more impressions and more engagement with those products because we can see how people walk through the store. All the data that someone figured out years and years and years ago, which is why milk is in the back of the grocery store. But how can you get new data for those things in real time? Putting up a sale item, what is the impact of that? How has that changed? So using, again, all of these cameras for this, we used this term, again, probably a decade ago. I hate saying these words out loud. Probably a decade ago, we talked about cross-functional video and how cameras for security could be used for a bunch of other things, but we're really at the point where this stuff is taking off with vision data and with all of the metadata and analytics and business intelligence sort of things that are happening. So it's really been this shift that we've started to see.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think that would be also similar to the challenges we're facing. If I think even back to 2019 when we had analytics that were really pixel-based, if you will. They were very classic software analytics. And those were unreliable. I mean, you could have a car drive by and the headlights would give you a false alarm, or a cloud would create a shadow, or even just anything else, because they were based on rudimentary logic. And then just that pivot towards machine learning, and where we finally turned that corner that seemed to be decades in the making towards deep learning and more powerful AI analytics, really revolutionized what was possible. And we saw it in a meeting with one of our largest partners, where when we first showed them our Axis Object Analytics, which is our deep learning AI analytics, where we can recognize object classes, and that capability to say, I don't care about shadows or lights or pictures. If it's the shape of a human or a vehicle or et cetera, then that's something I care about. And once they saw it, it was this light bulb moment, aha. And as often in my role, thankless in some ways, where instead of being like, this is perfect. I can't wait to fly forth. They're saying, this is great. I have all this clean data. What am I supposed to do with it? Right. And it goes exactly to what you're talking about, where we've recognized it's important for us in this newer era to not just make amazing cameras. We have to start there. Good data in is essential for good data out, but also making sure we have the good building blocks to empower all these other decisions and capabilities to be made. Because while it is still relevant to be able to detect a human or a vehicle in environments where they're not supposed to be, or going directions they're not supposed to be, or hanging out for too long in an area they're not supposed to be, what have you, it's also the data that those can collect, right? I'll give a really good anecdote. We were trying in those early years of simple algorithms to create a loitering one, where I'd love to see a vehicle parked, let's say, at a gas station pump for too long, or how long would they be there, just to create a data for those gas station owners who that struggles. If someone's pumps the gas and then goes inside and spends 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, how many other people can't use that pump? And how big of a problem is that, right? It doesn't mean they're going to run out there and yell at the people or whatever, but they would understand, is this something we should maybe take care of? And we couldn't create a loitering analytic that would trigger accurately after about 2 minutes. 5 minutes was really tough for us. It was so challenging because it had to remember the very first frame where that object parked and that it was still there for that long. And it was such a logic, so much computation to be able to achieve. Fast forward to being able to leverage AI and object classifications and a few other technological advances. And now we can do it for hours. And you can tell how long is someone in a parking lot. Let's say you have these 2 hours for free. Cool. How big of a problem is it if a vehicle parks there? Or how frequent of a problem is it if a vehicle is parked there for beyond 2 hours? Should we be spending our meter maids there or meter people there regularly? Or if this is a pretty good parking lot where people aren't really over, that maybe isn't a place they need to check that often. Certainly they should go there. But you see what I mean? It gives them decisions and data points that were so difficult technologically before, but now we are able to do this better, and we recognize, at least in my team, how important it is to provide that data set and the tools for other people to be able to leverage them, whether they're ourselves internally or your ecosystem partners externally.
It's such a great point you made, this idea of now what. Oftentimes we think about AI and analytics and how it can give me all this data and it can solve all these problems for me. But it's not necessarily solving the problem. It's just giving you the data about the problem. There has to be then this discussion of now what, and that's people or process or paper things that someone else needs to figure out. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions on AI today, is that it will just do all this stuff for me. No, it's giving you something, but now you have to figure out what else do you want to do with all of that data, and how do you want to respond, and how do you want to interact with it. So the AI piece is helpful, but it still requires people to do something about it.
And there's such a rapidly moving technology world we live in. It's difficult for everyone to know what type of questions to ask, and there's such diversity across segments, across needs to get there. So maybe it's a good time for us to dive into how we hope this podcast is going to start providing that information to them.
A great place to start is always why. Right, Axis is a big fan of Simon Sinek. Why Secure Insights? Why are we really here? And the idea is that Axis is committed to this concept of transparency. Right, we want to be open. It's one of our cultural beliefs to be always open. And certainly there are things you don't even tell me about what's on the roadmap, so you probably can't share here. But what are the things that we can try to shed some light on and be a little bit more open with and transparent about industry trends or topics or new technologies that are coming, and try to give these honest and real world perspectives of these things going on. And frankly, those perspectives probably won't come from us. It'll probably come from the people in this seat who will add a lot of value to the things that we want to talk about, because that's really what we want to get to is what are people actually living and experiencing out in the wild, and what does it actually look like for them?
Yeah, I can say, well, I won't reveal anything about our roadmap. I can suggest that all of our hardware will come with a PoE port. So there's a little teaser for you. Don't tell anybody. But more importantly, what informs our roadmap is the people who will be sitting here in this chair. It's the real world challenges, having informed conversations about technology, security, as well as just innovation in general, right? Being able to talk about, if we look at like a modular camera that we came out with, was the first time that there was an IP camera sensor separated from the IP camera. And to make that a reality certainly took some engineering, but it also took talking to customers, understanding, is this actually going to meet their needs? And it did, because it created a very small form factor and a larger camera that could be placed somewhere else, allowing the resolution of the challenge, which was putting a camera into something that didn't have a lot of real estate to it. And so I think having these guests here is going to be really helpful, and about building and fostering relationships. Certainly sharing our relationships together and with our customers that are going to join us and our partners, but also with the audience out there as well, so that they can benefit from this in learning a space where they can kind of learn about technology, learn about different industries, learn about different challenges and needs, because for all these that are out there, there's a chance for anybody, whether they're a partner, another person in the space trying to provide security services, it gives them the chance to recognize a need, and hopefully through that need find an opportunity for business and for adding value to the world.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about guests. Example guests will be Axis experts who have a certain level of subject matter expertise on a certain topic. It could be a certain technology. It could be a segment. We'll also have partners coming in, certainly from the technology partner side. I have a long list of partners that would love to have a seat at the table. Could be channel partners, could be other consultants that we work with in the industry, could be end users who have a story to tell about how they actually live and work with and use these technologies. But then who benefits? Who are the people that should be sitting here listening to this stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Anyone in this industry, it actually kind of begs itself to, why did we create this platform? Or invites that conversation. We created this platform like Secure Insights because we've recognized that one of our strengths, and we've kind of talked about this a bit today, is this collaborative approach to business and long-term partnerships. And so through that, we gain a lot of knowledge and experience through the diversity of people that we talk to, and we utilize it to share with other people to make sure that they have the information they need to make the best decisions for their business, for whatever purposes. And so I think anyone in this industry can benefit from this podcast, because what we hope to be is an objective, unbiased opinion, and just learning about the stuff that's out there. This is what has propelled us as an organization, and we hope to share it with everybody else so that it might benefit them in whichever way they utilize it.
Yeah. And before we invite our guest in, if you have anyone that you would recommend to be on the show, feel free to put it in the comments. We'll take a look and see if it's someone that we can invite in to have a deeper conversation with.
With that, maybe we cut to bringing in our guest.
Excellent. Sounds great.
Okay, we're back, and now we're joined by Kelly DeLeo, the Director of Business Development and Services here at Axis Americas. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
Kelly's great to have as a first guest because Steve and I both report up into her, so hopefully we don't get in trouble for anything we do here. But maybe, Kelly, as a place to start, you could tell us a little bit about what actually is encompassed in the role of Director of Business Development and Solutions and Services.
Yeah, for sure. So anything that Axis wants to launch into the Americas market in some way or form comes through our organization. So if we look at all the different technologies, anything that we may consider launching but haven't yet decided to launch, also how anything gets supported or if we provide professional services on those things, as well as, of course, integration partners to all of those technologies in some way comes through our organization.
Is you talk about how we have our support team as part of our business development. And usually a business development team is only forward thinking and support is kind of in the back half of stuff. How does the shift of bringing the support teams with business development, how has that changed the way we look at stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we try to think about support from the get-go, especially in product development. We are very fortunate to have organizations like Steve's team that are influencing back into our product management and R&D organizations, and we're taking that feedback directly from customers who are calling into the phones to try and improve our solutions and services. So typically, we're talking about this term we've coined supportability, making sure that our products are not only easy for people to use, but also easy for us to support and maintain.
Sounds like a Swedish word, supportability.
Yeah.
But it's good. I think it's important to be considering those things as we launch this stuff. But maybe before we dig into more of those things, tell us a little bit about, you've been at Axis we've been dating ourselves with our time at Axis. How long have you been at Axis? What's your experiences been like, and what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of an interesting journey at Access. I've been with the company now coming up on 17 years. And I started in the marketing organization. And I literally started just by picking pens out of a closet and packaging them for trade shows. So very early career, started just out of college. And while I worked in marketing for, close to 11 years, I made the transition over to business development solutions and services in 2020 when I took on the initiative to really get our video management software driven throughout the Americas organization. And, within a few years, I ended up taking over the business development organization. But I should also say, even when I was in the marketing team, my organization was always focused on products, solutions, and services. So we were always in support of the business development efforts anyway. So I've had a long time working on our technology, and now more so on the technology forefront instead of more on the marketing side.
Yeah, and was there, in this journey that's kind of taken you across different parts of the organization, were there mentors or anybody influential that really helped you evolve? Because it is quite a different path that you've taken.
It is. Yeah. So, in the early stages of my career, absolutely Laura Wilson, who's now at one of our partner companies, was formative in my early leadership journey. And she was somebody who really believed in me and thought I could take on a leadership role when I wasn't really sure I wanted to move into leadership. She also was the person who fundamentally taught me the basics and strategies around marketing. During that time, I was also, as I mentioned, in support of the business development organization, which was run at the time by Scott Dunn. And Scott Dunn has been one of my mentors, especially in that transition from moving into marketing into business development. But he was the type of person who always was bringing up my name, at tables that I wasn't sitting at. And I think he's a tremendous mentor for many people across the organization.
I think Steve and I can probably both put Scott on our list. I also had the pleasure of working for Laura, and she was phenomenal and gave me a lot of great advice over the years. So she's continues to be fantastic, not just for us, but for the industry. But talking about some of the industry things, you've been very involved in SIA Rise, and some of the mentorship mentee programs that they have as well. What does it mean to help foster these types of relationships in the industry?
Yeah, it is, for me personally, one of the most beneficial programs that I've been a part of. You get to know a community of like-minded individuals, and you get to feel a sense of belonging in an industry that, in large part, you may not necessarily feel like you're really represented in. And so SIA Rise for me has been really about community building. The mentorship program itself, they do a fantastic job with pairings, and the people that I have had the joy to be mentors for, I still keep in touch with to this day because they're just tremendous humans and also people who are looking to grow their career in an industry, again, that maybe they're not seeing themselves represented. So I think we're building quite a force with SIA Rise, and it's been an awesome thing to take part in, but also to watch these other young professionals rise through the industry and win awards and things like that. So we're building a movement in the industry, I think.
Yeah, interesting. And it's really exciting. We were talking earlier in the intro to this about how much this is an evolving industry and how important that's probably going to be to have the human capital and have the bright minds that are empowered and motivated to try to tackle these different challenges. And so maybe this gives us a chance to talk about what type of challenges do you see today that maybe weren't relevant 5 or 10 years ago that we need all of these people to be developed in towards?
Yeah. If I take kind of a step back, I think technology in general has fundamentally changed and accelerated in the last several years. The market itself is also changing alongside that. So you see an industry that traditionally has been pretty slow to adopt new commercial technologies, trying to make sense of a world where things like AI are just making things explode in terms of how quick technological advancement is coming.
Yeah, sure.
I think across the channel, really, we're seeing some of that friction. So if you look at end customers, they're trying to make sense of how do I just adopt some of these new technologies when, I have these legacy systems in place. And in a lot of cases, they're disparate systems or they're kind of a mix match of a bunch of different vendors. Maybe they're trying to work on standardizing their overall system. And all throughout that, there's also this question around how often should I lifecycle manage these devices.
Sure.
And like in a lot of cases, security is considered a cost center. So they're only getting the budget to refresh devices when something dies. And so what we're trying to really get to is a place where people are recognizing that there's an opportunity there for not only to be viewed as a cost center, but also as something that's driving value across their organization. So I see that a lot kind of on the end customer side. When it comes to making sense of technological advancement on the systems integrator front, I think it's even more challenging. There's more vendors in the market. There's newer technologies coming out. How can they ever keep pace with all of the different ones? So the rise in the manufacturer taking more ownership of their technology is also increasing. But the system integrator still plays a critical role here in integrating systems. So ultimately, we still obviously have a lot of value in that system integrator channel, but they're also challenged with how do I make sense of recurring revenue models? How do I make sense of providing additional services like managed services on top of my typical break-fix services and support contracts? So I think there's a lot happening in that space. And then, of course, on the manufacturer front, we're all trying to figure out what's the best way for us to implement these technologies that make the lives easier for both systems integrators and the users.
You talked a little bit there about it's not my phrase, but I love the phrase of consumption gap.
Yep.
There's a gap between the technology and the stuff, the features and functions and things that are available in a device and what actually gets used.
Yep.
How does an end user bridge that gap? Is it the responsibility of the end user to get the most of what they're paying for? Is it the responsibility of the integrator to make sure it's configured and set up in the right way? Or is it more and more the responsibility of the manufacturer to say, here's how we can enable more for you and make your life a little bit easier?
Yes. I mean, seriously, it's the responsibility of the whole ecosystem to make sure that we're getting the most out of these different technologies, right? So I think the end customer probably has the most on the line because they have to showcase the value of their technology investment. But when it comes to the support that they need, they can't do that by themselves. So manufacturers, we need to make it easier for them to consume that information and to adopt those technologies readily. And that could come with, advice on how to scale in an appropriate way. It could come with, maturity models and identifying, here's the stage that you're at in your security profile. And as you're trying to evolve through to the next stage, how are you working with your organization to define the vision for where that's headed? And then from a system integration standpoint, I hear this all the time. End customers are just questioning, especially with access devices or cameras. How can I just take advantage of the analytics that are already on the devices that I have, right? And I think it's for the systems integrators to make sure that they're educated on those things to help enable those end customers to take the best advantage of their system.
I want to dig on one of the things you said there. This, particularly because it lands very well in my wheelhouse. This concept of partner ecosystem first approach. There was recently in industry trends reports from Axis, and it listed, again, I love to see it, as the number one thing, this ecosystem first approach. What else are you seeing in this industry trends? Like, what are the other big drivers that we're seeing from the Axis side to see these shifts in the industry?
Yeah, and I mean, maybe to talk a little bit about the ecosystems first approach, like, I know we're talking about it as a trend, but I think the trend has shifted just a little bit because people have always taken an ecosystems first approach in the security industry. You figure out what kind of VMS you want, you figure out what kind of access control system you want, and then you build the rest of your security system around that ecosystem, right? In kind of the new age, especially as you start looking into like cloud service providers and IT organizations who are typically standardizing on one or a few of the cloud service providers, that's really where you start to see the ecosystem first approach transform a little bit because as organizations start moving more of their tech stack into the cloud, they're probably going to standardize on one or maybe two of the major cloud service providers. And the ecosystem that plays around that is going to be the one that is going to win with that customer, right? Some of the other, I guess, trends that we've really been seeing, obviously the rise in the use of vision intelligence or using your camera or your camera feed for more intelligence, that has been a tremendous one. I think the same report cited that has doubled in just 1 year of security organizations looking at how they can make more sense of the data.
Vision data is some of the richest digital data out there, and there's so much that can still be extracted from it.
Absolutely. And like one of the craziest things is we're sitting on a gold mine as an industry. We literally have servers sitting all over the place that just have a ton of video data. Imagine what could be extracted from that in terms of business intelligence. Or if you actually wanted to take it more in real time, how could you leverage that data to make more informed business decisions? Like, I think the most basic example that we see is around occupancy. Like, all you have to do is count people, and you can start to make a little bit more sense of how your space is being used. Or I've seen it in the example of like biopharmaceutical companies looking at how is lab tech equipment getting used, and like, do we need to invest more in additional space and things like that?
It's a really good jump off point just to talk about we were mentioning earlier about the challenges and opportunities of AI. But if you talk about occupancy, you start to get down to what are groups of people? Maybe I'm a retailer or something. I want to worry about or be mindful about how many people are coming in, but is it one person or is it a group of people? Because maybe groups matter. It's not 3 people, it's one group. And the biggest challenge is how can AI define what a group is, where sometimes an operator or viewer couldn't do it. But it comes to, well, there's so much that we could see with this vision data. There's also so much we need ecosystem partners and other people to play, because what is a group? Is it, a predefined thing? It's kind of impossible to do that. Every group's going to be different. It could be 2 friends walking in together. It could be a family. It could be people who met up in the aisle and just kind of walking next to each other. How do you differentiate those? So it goes to the rich data, but the complexity of extracting all that value.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the case with all AI. You have to have some sort of like human intervention kind of around all of this, right? And I think what you're getting at is the analysis piece. And what is a group for one organization may actually be different for another organization. I think we've seen this a lot actually in the security industry when you talk about things like object left behind. What defines an object?
Could be anything.
Exactly.
What's
but like,
a bag?
And it depends on the organization that you're working with, right? So I think what AI is actually going to be enhancing is our ability to make those kind of nuanced analysis of the data, to be able to say, I actually only want this threshold to trigger some sort of alarm or to inform somebody with some bit of information, right?
So in this partner ecosystem first approach, right? You mentioned historically it's been, well, what's my VMS system? What are my devices? What's my access control system? As we talk about vision data, this is a whole new set of ecosystems that are coming in. Again, something that I love because we get to test and play with all sorts of fun new stuff. But what does that mean for an end user who now has to bring together the security folks, the IT folks, maybe operations, or other groups that they haven't normally brought to the table? How do they navigate that change and those kind of this new ecosystem for them to play with?
Yeah, I think this is probably in part the biggest challenge that we have right now with that bit of transformation, because many security organizations don't even have the staffing to just manage the daily operations of security, right? And so when you start tasking them with these other major business initiatives, I think it becomes even more taxing on them to be able to deliver on the core promise that they've made to their business, which is largely safety and security and risk mitigation, right? In general, not many organizations are set up today to make that leap immediately. And so what we have actually seen more often is that stakeholders from different parts of the business start to make investments in additional cameras, and then the security organization is starting to question why additional cameras are coming onto their network. And that's usually where that engagement starts. That said, there's probably a broader business implication or business case that could be made for how security could get more tightly intertwined there. And I actually think that the most obvious way for that to happen is through the IT organization. So security teams that actually sit within IT tend to be more forward-thinking. They tend to have implemented, lifecycle management processes and have more capabilities than organizations that potentially, for example, sit on their own network or are not considered as a part of the IT infrastructure. But when you start looking at the IT organization, they typically are the ones that are also being tasked with helping these other business organizations make sense of or find solutions for the business outcomes that they're trying to achieve. And so that IT organization could potentially be the bridge to enable the security to be seen more as that value driver for the rest of the business.
We hear anecdotally all the time from retailers, reducing shrink by 1%, it's a pretty good number, right? That means security stuff is maybe working. If they can increase sales by 1%, this is a very different number. This is a very different budget. This is access to all sorts of other funds that maybe they didn't see before. So on the retail side, things like that tend to make a lot of sense.
I think that's just in general. Like psychology says around like the negative versus the positive, like people are absolutely going to want more and more and more, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you talked about bridging the gap between IT and security and making sure that security is managing their systems the way they need to. So when we talk about device interoperability and lifecycle management, what does that actually mean for a security practitioner who's maybe not as familiar with some of those things as maybe an IT organization would be?
So I think about this maybe more like on a longer time horizon, because typically you're making a decision up front about like, how is this going to solve my security needs as it needs to be today? Oftentimes you may not be considering kind of all of the additional costs that come over the life cycle of that device, coming from like an interoperability standpoint. It may be that like you make a decision today that could potentially mean it's a full rip and replace in 5 to 7 years if you decide that you want to switch vendors or you decide that something's not quite working right? So from an interoperability standpoint, that decision up front could have implications for the long run. Again, ecosystem first mentality, right? From a lifecycle management standpoint, it really depends on what your company's posture is. Like if you have an IT organization that says we have a standard IT policy that says you have to refresh devices every 5 years, that's a very different conversation than if you have an organization that says we're only going to replace it when it completely shuts off.
Sure.
So I think you have to make those decisions based off of the bounds that you are given within your organization. But ultimately, all of this ties back to investment. And like I said earlier, security organizations may not always get the budget that they need. And so if you can build that case for both interoperability and lifecycle management up front, it means that you can showcase how that consistent refresh over time is actually going to not only benefit your security practice, but potentially in the future benefit, other parts of the organization.
In the spirit of helping them build that business case, right? What are some of the risks if they don't? What if they can't make this or the organization isn't buying in? What risks are they seeing if you don't consider interoperability? You still live in the classic CCTV world.
Yeah. So I think one of the simplest ways to look at this is you could, for example, let's take Axis as an example. You could invest in a camera that has, a different cost and lower capabilities today, or you could invest a little bit more in a camera that has an ARPEC 9 chipset and has the ability to do enhanced analytics today, and has more cybersecurity capabilities and more processing on the edge and all sorts of other things, right? And if you do that as a straight cost comparison today, that could potentially hamper your ability to do more business value, vision intelligence things in the future. So if you're purchasing today without considering in the future, I actually want for my security practice to bring more value back to my organization, I want to leverage the data that these cameras are producing in order to help with other business outcomes around my business, you may be actually hampering your entire security practice by making that decision today. So I think you have to, again, consider where is it that you see your practice heading and how is it that you want to invest upfront now in order to see that happen in the future.
So talking about things like the ARPEC 9 and AV1, we put a lot of intelligence on the edge, or what we call the edge, which is the camera. Other people use different meanings for edge. But we also see people still using full on-prem systems. People are leveraging cloud. How are these things starting to interact? I mean, cloud is one of the biggest trends and buzzwords in the industry. When we talk about hybrid systems, cloud, edge, on-premise solutions, what is changing in the idea of balancing these things together and making the most of your system by leveraging different aspects of these different components?
It's funny that you say cloud is the biggest buzzword and trend because I feel like cloud's been around forever. All of these are just mechanisms for us to be able to deliver technology, right? And I think oftentimes when you see sort of a tech stack, you see cloud as like above edge or server. And what we've started talking about with our R&D organization is they're actually more horizontal. You can choose to deploy things on the premises, like on the edge. You can choose to deploy things on servers, and those servers could be virtual machines also in the cloud. And you could choose to deploy certain aspects in the cloud. And quite frankly, most different types of technologies, especially in our space, are doing a combination of all of those things anyway. So when people talk about like on-prem versus cloud, typically I think they're talking about who owns the infrastructure. Who is managing the infrastructure? Like, am I leaving it to a cloud service provider to manage the infrastructure, or do we want the autonomy and the privacy to be able to manage that infrastructure ourselves? And it's the same when you start talking about software as a service. Like, if I want the company to manage the devices for me and manage the updates and all of that stuff, then I might go with software as a service. But if I want to manage that myself, I'm probably going to go with edge or on-prem, right?
I think you kind of identify maybe an evolution in the increased processing power, because we probably couldn't have done as much 10 years ago as we can do now to make that such a horizontal conversation, but that's truly where we are. So how do you think increased processing power, if we call our devices edge devices, things that are at the end of the network, how is that kind of evolving the conversation and influencing real-time decision making, if you will, in terms of the logic a system can provide?
Yeah, I think in terms of, again, the distribution of how you want your technology to run, edge processing really enables a lot of things. Cost savings is one major one, because you don't need to deploy as many servers to do the same types of processing. Another really interesting thing about edge-based analytics and analysis is that you can actually take some of that data and very quickly get real-time alerts.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's really fundamentally shifted all that much in recent years. Like, we've always had this edge-based technology. What I think is shifting now is the capabilities of AI and how it can improve workflows and things like that.
Yeah, it's become much greater.
Exactly.
I think we would be maybe remiss too to talk about devices that are not cameras. Obviously, talking about edge processing, a lot of these things are valuable to drive analytics coming from a vision data sensor or a camera, depending on the terminology. But we're seeing also this unification of devices and systems across the network. Audio, intercom, access control are the obvious ones, obviously from the access portfolio. How does that unification of these systems continue to help drive the shift from reactiveness to being more proactive?
All of these different systems working together enable both operators and security personnel to take advantage of real-time alerts and potentially have automation for things like talk down to intruders and things like that. So, I mean, you could, in theory, get alerts about door first open, you get video verification. All of those things just happen very naturally. And again, I don't know if that's relatively new for the industry. Where you really start to see things evolving is when you start to see a lot of that stuff is kind of happening automatically in the background without the need for security personnel intervention. So, for example, we had a retail chain that had some distribution centers that were getting a lot of their trucks hijacked. And they implemented literally just a cross-line detection with a camera and an audio device to talk down to people and say that the police were coming. I don't know that it was actually alerting the police, but it was alerting the intruders that police were on their way. And their hijack costs went down by like $1 million in like a year. So you start to hear these different types of conversations, types of automatic things getting put in place. And yes, there's a security person on premises during that, but ultimately, like, that person doesn't necessarily have to get there in time to stop the intruder when you have something like audio to talk down.
It's giving that security personnel more tools and resources to be more effective and efficient at their job. So it's just enabling them to do a little bit more and to have a little bit more.
Yeah.
And with the diversity of devices, and we've talked about video data being some of the most rich that's out there, but there's also a diversity of data. We talked about environmental sensors, we talk about acoustic sensors, we talk about a diversity of type of devices out there that are really forming an intelligent sensing platform, if you will. Where do you see the shift towards, or where do you see the value being created by the shift? Like how are people able to benefit this, and what type of things should they be thinking about?
Honestly, I again come back to having to take a look at your own organization and what is most important to your organization. It is one thing for you to have a platform that just collects and senses a bunch of data, but it's not until you actually make meaning behind the data that you get anywhere. So for example, let's take a quick serve restaurant. You have a drive-through, you have a flow like in front of house, and then you also have the flow in the back end of like where your servers are making things, right? You can actually take analysis of those 3 different quadrants and figure out more meaningful information around it. But today you probably already have cameras looking at that. You're not actually making any sense of that data until you put some sort of analysis behind it. So I think, again, in general, businesses need to take a look at what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then figure out how they can use that type of data to make more informed decisions around it. Data without the analysis is just data.
Yeah, I mean, it was not so long ago we were headed towards big data. Everybody wanted to talk about big data, and then we realized it was kind of overwhelming if you don't make synthesis of it.
Yeah.
One of the things we had talked about, excuse me, at the top of the episode was how it requires all of these different teams to come together. It's now security and IT and operations, because they're looking at different pieces with the data. Security team wants to solve shrink. Operations wants to solve efficiencies, and IT wants to just make sure that risk is mitigated and that their cyber postures are all where they need to be. What are the other big trends maybe that you're seeing that will go into impacting how organizations look to design security infrastructure and security systems?
I think one of the things that many in the security industry are still contending with is services in general, managed services, and this difference between operating expense and capital expense, right? When we talk to security organizations, they largely have historically been working in capital expense, and many of these businesses are trying to move more and more towards operating expense. Not all of the security industry is set up to do that. Like if you have a conversation with a user who wants to move to a hardware as a service model, there are very few vendors who are capable of managing that today. So I think in general, that's probably another one of those areas that the customer demand is going to start to influence where both security integrators and manufacturers are moving.
Is there, kind of along that line, are there any emerging technologies or trends that get you most excited? We've talked a lot about looking back and maybe where we are, but looking forward, what gets you so excited about being in this industry for the next 5 years?
Yeah. Again, because we come from the camera side, a lot of what we've been talking about when it comes to like AI, mostly on the computer vision side, are really exciting to me. When I start hearing these use cases about how cameras with AI and robotics are working together to solve really challenging manufacturing challenges. Like those are the types of things that get me really excited because I can see where things are headed. There's also just so much of untapped potential. There's a ton of startups in this space right now. I think it's just like a time where people are really storming around this topic. And it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out on top and what those technologies are capable of doing. So I think that is going to be a very formative thing. And it has a lot of implications for camera manufacturers primarily. The security industry, yes, but camera manufacturers primarily.
Yeah, vision data to me is super interesting. The idea that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, what's 30 frames a second of 8K video? Like, what is the value of that? Streaming 24 hours a day,
For all
7
those
days a
math
week.
people out there, feel free to drop that in the
Yes.
comment, whatever that
Big
maths
numbers.
out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of us are math people.
So what should organizations, to kind of wrap up based on what you're excited about, what we've talked about, what should organizations be thinking about or do today to prepare for where the industry is headed?
Cool. I think there are probably 2 things I would say. we've seen this alignment and convergence with security and IT happening over the last, more than a decade. I think making sure that's happening within your organization is critical. And encouraging that to happen, if you're a system integrator or a manufacturer, that's also really critical. So again, that IT organization could be that bridge into other parts of the organization. And it also means that you likely are going to have a much easier time with lifecycle management and the ease of managing your overall security fleet. So that's one. The second, this is maybe a little bit of a weird sideball one.
Love that.
If you don't have developers or coders on staff today, I would invest in some, both at the end customer and at the system integrator side. And the reason for that is AI is actually getting better at helping with code, but you still need people who actually know code in order to do things really effectively. But we're really right now at a stage where there aren't a whole lot of organizations that are doing these niche AI applications or analytics applications. And you may be in a position to potentially build something that is super meaningful within your own organization. And obviously continue to tap into our partner network. Like, don't get me wrong there. But ultimately, there are going to be certain applications that make a ton of sense for your business, but maybe aren't super viable elsewhere. And these developers have the opportunity to use open APIs and things like that to make those types of things happen. And I've seen that some of the most advanced, both end customers and systems integrators, are the ones that have that capability in-house.
And if I can just synthesize something you mentioned as well throughout this, but it seems like this evolution you've talked a lot about is also helping security evolve from a cost center to demonstrating ROI. So if they're not thinking about how they might be able to find ROI, this is a great opportunity to rise and to demonstrate themselves within their business, within the industry, on what can we do to leverage these technologies, these things that are out there, because it is truly a time where we can start to show ROI in ways always much harder in the past.
Absolutely. And again, like, if you're feeling overwhelmed by that, just take a step back and make sure your house is in order first before you start moving into those areas. But plan for that as you're getting your house in order.
There's a ton of resources out there with SIA, with Anaxis, and beyond. So that's part of this. It's a community, as you mentioned about CRIs, just helping each other and growing.
I think it's a great segue to kind of wrap up in the idea of we will have plenty more guests on Secure Insights that will talk about these different topics from campus and educational safety, healthcare, other specialist experts. I think lined up soon, we have some audio expertise coming in to talk to us as well. So these are the exact kind of conversations that we want to address with this podcast, and being able to have these conversations with the real life practitioners. Kelly, fantastic insights as always. So thank you for joining us in our very first episode.
Thanks for having me.
So that generally wraps up the conversation today. Thank you to all of our listeners who made it through our first version of this as we figure out what we're doing up here. If this conversation interested you, definitely subscribe to the Access America's YouTube channel. Hit the little bell button to make sure that you're notified the next time an episode pops up. And we hope to see you on the next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly, for being here, and thank you all for watching. A safer world doesn't build itself. It takes ideas, partnerships, and the courage to keep innovating. So hopefully this podcast will help you guys go that direction.
Thank you. Thanks for being part of the conversation today. And this has been Secure Insights from Access Communications.